Well, good morning, neighbor. Yesterday, Julie and I went to a Reds game, and I noticed that every batter that got up to bat had their own theme song. As they stepped up to bat, they all had their own song that they played, each one kind of matching their personality. And I thought, ooh, I really need my own theme song when I get up to preach. And I thought, wait, no, I don't. I got Mr. Rogers. It doesn't get any cooler than that. We are in this series we're calling Neighborhood, Won't You Be My Neighbor, where we're asking the question, what does it look like for us to be neighbors to one another? What does it mean for us to love our neighbors like Jesus said to love our neighbors? And we're coming to recognize that most of us learned most of what we know about being a neighbor from Mr. Rogers. But everything that Mr. Rogers knew about neighboring, he learned from Jesus. And so we're going back to the source. We're really digging into what does it mean when Jesus calls us to love our neighbors and to recognize that the single most loving thing we can do is to invite our neighbors into a life-transforming relationship with Jesus. That the most loving thing you can do, if you really love your neighbor, if you really love your friends, if you really want to do what's best for them, the most loving thing you can do is invite them into a life-transforming relationship with Jesus. Now listen to what Jesus says in the book of Matthew. Matthew chapter 18, it says, Jesus called a little child to him, and he placed the child among them, and he said, truly I tell you, unless you change, catch that church, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And so this is why I'm constantly reminding us that kids are Jesus' favorite people. And if they were Jesus' favorite people, they probably ought to be our favorite people as well. Because Jesus said, unless we change to become like one of them, we can't even think about entering into the kingdom of God. And this is why I've begun to believe why Mr. Rogers focused so much of his attention and his mission in life on children. Because I think children have learned something, or children know something about neighboring. They know something about friendship that way too many of us as adults have forgotten. Some of us have kind of forgotten how to make friends. Watch this.
Hello. Hi. Hello.
Hello.
My name is Layla.
Cool. Are you here with your parents or?
Yeah, with my mum. Are you shy or something?
No.
It's kind of boring having a tea or coffee by yourself. You need somebody to talk to.
Why are you wearing a hat?
How much money do you have? Why is your hair white?
It's a bit like the trees in autumn. You know, you can ask a tree, why are your leaves brown?
Do you mean in the bank or?
Like your pocket money and stuff like that.
£560 a month pension.
Wow.
If you had that, what would you do?
I would get a dog and get a house and a swimming pool and go on X Factor. Do you have Netflix?
Nothing like that. I've just got a radio.
We normally play bulldog.
People still play bulldog?
Yeah.
I remember playing that.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Peter Piper picked a...
Okay.
Where are your friends and where they are right now?
Some of my friends are abroad. I was born in Jamaica, so a lot of my friends are there, you know.
I mean, I'm new in London.
Well, I've had hundreds and thousands of friends. At the moment, I've got a lot of Facebook friends.
Well, maybe I can sit with you and have some coffee. Yeah?
You like coffee?
Yeah.
Do you? What's your favourite?
Hot chocolate.
Hot chocolate.
Why can't everybody be friends?
That's a good question.
It's not as easy as that, really.
I couldn't walk up to somebody in here and say, would you like to play with me? I'd be a bit strange.
I think everyone should talk to everybody.
That's the nicest thing I've heard all day.
You've really made my day.
Making friends is easier than eating chocolate. I think everyone in the world should have one big party and become friends.
When did it become so hard to make friends? When did we turn into such introverts? When did we start cringing at the thought of meeting new people and engaging people outside of our little inner circles? Remember when neighbors used to be those people you could always count on to borrow a cup of sugar from? Remember that? You know, you'd run out, you need one more egg for the pancakes that morning or whatever. And rather than running to Kroger's or running to UDF, you just go knock on the neighbor's door and you'd say, hey, can I borrow a cup of sugar? And the answer was always, of course you can. Yes, of course you can. When did we lose that? How many of you can honestly say that you have a best friend? Think about it, your best friend. And when I say best friend, I don't just mean the person who comments on your Facebook the most. I don't just mean the person you run into at work most often. I'm talking about a best friend, that person in your life who knows you to the core of who you are and loves you anyway. Do you have that person? Do you have the person in your life who always picks up the phone, who always shows up? Do you have that person in your life who has your back no matter what? That person in your life who would do anything for you, not just an acquaintance or a companion, but a true friend? Friends, those are rare. It's such a gift to have that kind of connection. Solomon tells us in the book of Proverbs, he says, a person of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. In other words, you can have all the Facebook friends in the world and still be the loneliest person on the planet. But when you have that one person, that one inner circle, that one small group, that one community who's willing to truly be a friend to you, that is more valuable than just about anything you can imagine. As I've been thinking about this series, I've been thinking about what does a good neighbor really look like. My mind automatically goes back to a time where Julie and I spent in college and where we met some friends named Len and Felicia Nicosia. This is them about 5 years ago or so as we visited together again. But let me give you a little history on how we met. Julie and I, right after high school, we got married, had kids right away, and then moved from Dayton to Chicago. Brand new married, 19 years old, little baby in the carrier's seat, trying to figure out life. And here we are, almost 400 miles away from anybody in the world that we knew. So we were all alone with each other. Right next door to us, we had moved into what our college had called married housing, which really meant we'll put an oven in a dorm room, and we'll call that married housing. And so we move in, and they had 2 married housing apartments, ours and the one right next door to us. And right next door to us lived Len and Felicia Nicosia. And they were in the same life stage we were in. They had a child almost the exact same as ours. We had a girl. They had a boy. They were young and married and all alone just like we were. And so immediately, because we had so much in common, we immediately connected. And honestly, not just because we liked each other, not because we had everything in common, we connected for survival, right? We connected for survival. We needed each other. We didn't know how to be married. We were 19 years old at the time. We didn't know how to be parents. We were 19 years old at the time. We didn't know how to do any of this kind of stuff. And so we needed each other. And so every day we were connecting back and forth. They had a key to our apartment. We had a key to theirs. We did grocery shopping together. We carpooled together. We took our kids to the same park together. We babysat their kids while they went out on date night. They babysat our kids while we went out on date night. And we counted on each other. We supported and we survived. I really truly believe because of this connection we had we had made. We were so close at one point that when we made a grocery list to go to Kroger's to pick up the groceries, if they had ketchup, we didn't buy ketchup. That's how close we were, right? We'd eat dinner 4 and 5 nights a week together, and we just built this connection between us. And part of it was about survival, but part of it was about some part of our soul that longed out for that deeper connection to other people. Now, Len and Felicia and Julie and I, we haven't lived in the same state in over 20 years. But you know, about 2 months ago when Len and Felicia were moving across the country and going through some life trauma, you know who they called? They called us. Because of that connection that not time and not distance can never separate. Because of that connection we built. And when I think of neighbors, I don't just think about those people who live across the street. I don't think about those people who kind of park their tire on my grass and I get all annoyed, right? That's not what when I think of good neighbors and the biblical concept of neighbors, I think about Len and Felicia and that deep, interdependent connection that we built and that we relied on. If you brought your Bible today, I want to invite you to go with me to Luke chapter 11. Luke chapter 11. Starting at verse 1. And Luke tells this amazing story of Jesus' disciples who come to him and they hear Jesus praying. And they hear this deep connection and this deep relationship that Jesus has with God. They hear the intimacy with which Jesus is praying. And they say, Jesus, we want what you have. Teach us how to pray. And so Luke describes that Jesus teaches them the Lord's Prayer. You know, give us this day our daily bread, thy kingdom come, all of that kind of thing. And then when Jesus had taught them the formula for prayer, he tells them a rather strange story. Listen to this, starting at verse 5. Jesus said to them, suppose you have a friend and you go to him at midnight, catch that, at midnight, and say, friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread. A friend of mine on a journey has come to me and I have no food to offer him. And suppose the friend on the inside answers, don't bother me. The door is already locked and my children and I are in bed. I can't get up and give you anything. I tell you, even though he will not get up and give you the bread because of friendship, yet because of your shameless persistence, hold on to that for a second, because of your shameless persistence, because you refused to go away, because you just kept knocking on the door, he will get up and give you as much as you need. And Jesus went on to say, so I say to you, ask and it will be given you. Seek and you'll find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. Everyone who seeks finds. And the one who knocks, the door will be opened. As I think about what it means to truly be a neighbor or a friend to someone else, I recognize that with neighboring or with relationships of any kind come some privileges and some responsibilities. And so I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the privileges and the responsibilities that come with neighboring. Jesus outlines some of the privileges of neighborhood here in this story. And the first privilege that I see Jesus pointing to is that when you are a neighbor, when you have a close friend, you have a go-to, right? Who do you call at midnight, right? When life gets hard, when everybody else is asleep, who can you call who you know won't yell at you for calling at midnight, right? That's your go-to. Yesterday morning, about 5:30 in the morning, I got a call from my daughter, which is very unusual. She calls me and I answer the phone and she had been in a little bit of a car accident. Somebody had cut her off and she'd hit a curb and popped the tire. And so she's on the side of the road trying to figure out what to do next with this popped tire. And so she calls me. You know why? Because I'm her go-to. Because who else are you going to call at 5:30 in the morning who won't yell at you for waking you up, right? I'm her go-to. Some of you who know me real well know that I struggle with depression. And I've struggled with it for a long time, and it's been a kind of a lifelong struggle for me. And so from time to time, I can find myself in a little bit of a funk. You ever been there? Just like no reason, there's nothing wrong. You're just kind of bleh, right? Just in this funk. This week, I found myself in one, and I reached out to my accountability partner, my go-to. And I just texted him and I said, hey, man, I need some help. And you know what he texted me back? I can be in your driveway in 45 minutes. That was his text. You know why? Because he's my go-to. And when we are truly doing life together, when we are truly engaging in what Jesus defined as neighborhood, then our go-tos, one of the privileges we have of neighborhood is that we can assume some grace and some help in times when we need it. We can assume some grace and some help. You know, another privilege of neighborhood is what I like to call refrigerator privileges. You know what refrigerator privileges are, right? It's those friends who can come over to your house and just walk in, go in the refrigerator, take whatever they want. They don't even ask, right? It's just like they own the place, they live here. You have built such a relationship with them that they have access to your refrigerator like that. And I was thinking to myself, it's interesting that Jesus describes this friendship as refrigerator privileges, right? This guy gets up at midnight and he just starts knocking on the door. Hey, I need some bread. Hey, I need some bread. No. I know you have a refrigerator. I know there's some bread in it. I'm just going to keep knocking until you, because I have refrigerator privileges. I know that's where we are. And I thought this week, who in my life really has refrigerator privileges? And that led me to thinking about all of the levels of privilege that people have based on the level of relationship. It's all over the place, isn't it? Right? So let me give you an example. If you're a stranger, you have what I like to call front porch privileges, right? You can come to my front porch, but I'm probably not letting you in the house. You're probably here trying to sell me something, trying to get me to vote some way or something like that. I'm just going to keep you on the front porch. If you're a stranger, that you have front porch privileges. If you and I are acquaintances, then I kind of know your name, or I kind of know a little something about you, where you're from. You might get entryway. I'll let you in the house. If it's raining, I won't make you stand out in the rain. But you have entryway privileges. I'll let you in that front entryway of the house. If we are casual companions, I know we're first name basis kind of deal, but nothing much beyond that. Then when you come over, I'm probably going to let you into the living room. That's where my casual companions kind of hang out. We invite you into the living room. We'll sit and chat there. But if you and I are close friends, you're going to get upstairs privileges. If we're close friends, you get upstairs privileges. Upstairs privileges is where that bathroom that we don't let anybody use is. Upstairs privileges is where the bedrooms are. Now, honestly, let's be honest. Even my close friends need 24-hour written notice to get upstairs privileges. But you get that closer access. Now, if you're my best friend, that's where those refrigerator privileges come into place. But there's an even deeper level than that only your spouse or your partner or somebody the most close relationships get, and that's those bedroom closets. Right? Those places nobody else, the junk drawer in the kitchen that you just pretend doesn't exist, that you hide everything in, that you'd be mortified if a guest opened that door, right? So depending on what level of relationship you're in, depends on the access that you have to my life. And one of the privileges of neighborhood is that you have the assumption of some access and invitation to these special places in my life. These places where I just don't let anybody go. Another privilege that Jesus outlines in this story is that a good neighbor will go the extra mile. Right? Not just when it's comfortable, not just when it's convenient. A good neighbor is going to get out of bed at midnight. A good neighbor is going to unlock the house that's already been locked up. A good neighbor is going to wake up the kids. Parents, some of you are thinking, I don't know anybody I love that much. Right? Wake up the kids. What are you, crazy? But A good neighbor will go that extra mile, not just when it's convenient, not just when it's comfortable, but when you need it. And so one of the privileges of neighborhood is this assumption we can have of sacrifice and selflessness. That our neighbors are going to sacrifice and be selfless, give of themselves for us. Finally, Jesus, as he talks about the privileges of neighborhood, one of the privileges is that a neighbor will always do the right thing for you. A neighbor will always have your best interest at heart. A neighbor will always do whatever it is they can do. A neighbor will always protect you, sometimes even protect you from yourself. And so of a neighbor, one of the benefits is that you can assume some blessing and some benevolence on the part of your neighbor. So there are all these privileges that come with being in intimate community with other people. All of these privileges. But let's not forget about the responsibilities. Right? Let's not forget about the responsibilities. And if you want to know what the responsibilities are, all you have to do is turn all of that on its head again and to recognize that if I want to be a neighbor, if I want to have the privileges of a friendship, then I have to offer that kind of gift to others. I have to demonstrate grace and help in order to receive it. I have to give access and invitation. It is my responsibility to practice sacrifice and selflessness. It is my responsibility to offer blessing and benevolence to those I'm in community with. Our problem is that at the end of the day, we kind of want to be friends with benefits without truly having the responsibility that comes with neighborhood. We want to receive rather than give. We want to be the one who gets the bread rather than the one who has to wake up the kids at midnight. But I've come to learn that in order to have a neighbor, you have to be a neighbor. In order to have a friend, you have to be a friend. And that, friends, you and I cannot give what we do not have. And this is a faith thing as well. Because so many of us are praying for our friends, our neighbors, our co-workers, our family members, and we so desperately want them to come to a life-transforming relationship with Jesus. But friends, you cannot give what you do not have. And so if you want to give a life-transforming relationship with Jesus, you have to have a life-transforming relationship with Jesus. It starts with you. Neighborhood starts with you. Now, I've been thinking during this series, why is these depth of friendships, why is this neighborhood concept so rare and so challenging? Why is it so hard? And here's what I've come to think, that in James chapter 4, verse 2, Jesus' brother James said this: we don't have because we don't ask. Let me say that again. We don't have because we don't ask. Now, I want to remind you of the context in which Jesus is telling this story. Remember, the disciples said, Jesus, teach us how to pray. And so he begins to tell this story, and I don't think Jesus' point is you got to pester God to the point that God gives up and gives you whatever you want. I think what Jesus is trying to tell us is that, hey, listen, you can't give up on the first try. You can't quit after the first start. Listen to what he says in verse 8. I tell you, even though he will not get up and give you bread because of your friendship, yet because of your shameless persistence, he will surely get up and give you as much as you need. Because you just stood there and knocked. Because you refused to give up. Because you refuse to take no for an answer. Because you continued to love and to reach out and to offer the hope and love of Jesus, God honors that shameless persistence. Now I hear, and I've been guilty of saying this myself, I've tried to be a good neighbor, but that person's just a jerk, right? Right? Or I've tried to be a good friend, but I got hurt. Or I've tried to be a good spouse, but it's just frustrating. Or I've tried to invite my friends to church, but they have 1,000 excuses. And what I hear from folks is that it didn't work, they didn't come, my expectations didn't get realized, or I got hurt, and so I quit. The bottom line that Jesus is teaching us in this story, that if you truly love those you're in relationship with, if you truly want to love your neighbor, you can't quit because you get a first no thanks. You can't quit because you get a first not this week. You can't quit because you're frustrated or hurt. And what I hear God saying is, don't quit on the people that you love. Just don't quit. Be shamelessly persistent. I love that image. Shamelessly persistent. I love you too much not to offer you the thing that is the most loving thing in the world. This is why a couple of weeks ago I began talking about this concept of holy discontent. Asking God to stir in us this desire, this shameless persistence that when we're told no, we're like, okay, I'll just keep knocking. When we're told not this week, you say, okay, I'll just keep on inviting. When we're told not now, we just say, okay, I'll just keep knocking because I know God has something in mind for you and I love you too much to ever quit on you. Like every important relationship on the planet, neighborhood takes constant work and constant engagement and some shameless persistence to just keep knocking, just keep asking, just keep seeking. In Revelation chapter 3, verse 20, there's this powerful verse that many of you recognize. It is this picture of Jesus standing at the door of your heart, knocking on the door of your heart. And Jesus, it said just knocks. Stand at the door and I knock. And I want you to imagine how that worked in your life. Because here's what I think I know about you. I bet you didn't open the door on the first knock. Here's what I think I know about you. I bet Jesus was knocking on your door before you ever stepped foot in church. I bet Jesus was knocking on your door before you ever did your first good thing, before you ever prayed your first prayer, before you ever gave your first dollar, before you ever said yes to Jesus. Jesus was knocking on your door. And over again, you said, not yet, no thanks, I don't want this. And Jesus just kept knocking because you are too important to Jesus to quit on. Because you are too valuable to ever give up on. And so Jesus just kept knocking. And for some of you, there was a day you opened the door and you let Jesus in, but maybe it was just for a visit. You said, all right, Jesus, I'll let you in on Sunday, but you got to go on Monday, and I'll see you back here next Sunday. And for some of you, it was kind of this in and out relationship, and Jesus just kept knocking. He never quit. He never gave up on you. He never stops seeking after you. And so I just want you to hear me say, church, that because of what Jesus has done for you, because of how deep God's love is for you, you offer that same love to your neighbors. Just keep asking. Just keep seeking. Just keep knocking. Because God has a miracle in store for them. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even in your lifetime. But God has a miracle in store for them because of you. And you know what it's like to finally say yes to Jesus and open that door. God, help us to open the door wide open to you. Teach us what it means to truly let you into our lives. To truly ask you to be Lord of every part of our lives. And then, God, because you have been so faithful, so shamelessly persistent, God, teach us how to offer that invitation to others. Teach us how to be persistent with the love and the grace that you've offered us to others that we love and that we care for. God, I ask for your blessing on my sisters and brothers today as we leave this place, and that as you send us out into the world to share your love with our neighbors and our friends. In Jesus' name, amen.